UCLA football could be poised for a big 2022 season in the wins category. Their schedule is a reason why we're going through each and every game and predicting their win total in the upcoming year. Let's go.
Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster. Thanks for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. If you're watching on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe wherever you're listening to or watching the show. I appreciate all of you out there who have done so already. This is episode number 2 that I'm recording well in advance because I will be on vacation by the time this drops without consistent, reliable, or fast access to a good internet connection point. So we're doing these season schedule previews ahead of time. So once again, I won't be quite as active in the YouTube comments as normal. If you want to ask me a question about a recent piece of news or anything that's happening, DM me at smalls_55 or at LO_Pac12. DM's wide open. Hop in there, shoot me a message, and I'll just answer it to you. I'll be a little bit more responsive there than on YouTube. But we're doing UCLA today, and they're fascinating. UCLA is fascinating because they're coming off of a good season in which they went 8-4. And I think people have some pretty solid expectations for them. But their schedule is one that is remarkably favorable in a number of ways. So we're going to go through all their games, predict the outcome of each one, and then at the end we will have a total for this year. But I think record-wise, this could be the best year yet under Chip Kelly. And the betting markets think it will be at least comparable to last year when they had 8 wins, which was the first time they'd been over 500 since Chip Kelly got the job. Their over-under in 2022 is 8.5. Last year it was 7. They, of course, went over that with an 8-win season. Unfortunately, their bowl game was canceled. But let's start September 3rd. They open at home against Bowling Green. And actually, before I go through each game, just so you're aware, when I'm talking about the schedule here, and you can have an idea when I'm going through, if you think like, oh boy, seems like they're playing a lot of games at home. Their first 3 games are at home, and they have just 1, 2, 3, 4 regular season road games this year. Only 4. Now, they don't have the most premier home field advantage in college football. They haven't been known for selling out their stadium or having a rabid fan base, but it's still an advantage to not have to travel and to play at home. So of the 12 regular season games on the docket for them this year, they're going to play 8 of them in the comfy confines of the Rose Bowl. And that is a pretty noteworthy advantage. And part of the reason they're doing that is they're starting with 3, essentially what you would call bye games. September 3rd, they play Bowling Green. What if I told you, sound like the ESPN 30 for 30 guy, what if I told you that game against Bowling Green was the toughest non-conference opponent that UCLA is going to face this year? That is true. That game against Bowling Green better be a win. The following week, back at home again, they play Alabama State. That better be a win. Then they play South Alabama. That better be a win. If there's any outcome other than 3-0 in that stretch for UCLA, the seat upon which Chip Kelly sits will start to increase in temperature rapidly. I don't know why this is their non-conference schedule this year. It's kind of strange. I mean, typically you'd have 2 cupcakes at the most and then 1 at least solid team to play. I mean, last year they played LSU, who was ranked 16th at the time. And now they're coming in with Bowling Green, South Alabama, or Alabama State, and then South Alabama. All 3 games at home, you got to win them all. And frankly, the best thing UCLA can do here is not just go 3-0, but go 3-0 looking like the team they were capable of being a season ago. They could have won 9 or 10 games last year. They very easily could have. But instead, they lost to Fresno State at home. Fresno State is better than any of those programs there. I don't think Bowling Green is comparable. I'll be honest, I didn't do a full deep dive on them here because they're a little bit of a footnote on the schedule here for UCLA. But those three games, you need to win. If you're Chip Kelly and the Bruins, you need to win convincingly. You've got a fifth-year starting quarterback, a preseason All-American caliber running back. I think I saw that correctly. Could be wrong. But, like Charbonnet is a stud. You're going to have a good offensive line. They've hit the transfer portal hard. Ninth-ranked portal class in the country, or somewhere in the top 10, floats around, I think, depending on where you look. You should be way better than all these teams, and there should not be a sniff of an upset in any of these games. If there is, that'll be a little bit of a red flag because UCLA is way better than all of those programs. So I think they will win them all. Whether or not it'll be 3 blowouts the way we'd expect, I don't know. I would have expected them to get a stop against Fresno State, who had to go the length of the field in like 30 seconds last year, and they weren't able to do that at home. So you never know. But let's assume that's a 3-0 start. That's what I'm predicting here. Anything other than that, gosh, if God forbid for UCLA fans, if that's 2-1, oh boy, that's a problem. That's a major, major problem. But then it doesn't exactly become that much more difficult as you get into conference play. The reason I think UCLA, I'll give you a little bit of a jump to the end, but then I'll lay it out during the rest of the show. I think UCLA is going to win 10 games this year. That's my prediction for them. It's a little bold, but I don't think it's that bold because I'm telling you, this schedule is really, really favorable. Not just the non-conference slate where you have 3 teams who are not at the Power 5 level and you should be able to beat handily at home. Their first road game is their first conference game as well, September 24th at Colorado. I've got low expectations for the Buffs, who were 4-8 last year and got hit pretty hard by the transfer portal this offseason. This being a road game, Colorado actually has some pretty decent attendance numbers, so it's not like you'll be playing in front of nobody there, even if the Buffs have lost a couple games, but it won't be so late in the season if Colorado is what I expect them to be this year that, fans are giving up all hope and are not showing up to the game. So you'll have some road noise to deal with, but again, UCLA is the better roster, better quarterback, better running back. Everywhere you look, UCLA is probably going to be better in just about every facet there. So I expect them to win that game and start the year 4-0. But as far as your first 4 games go, that's an opportunity for UCLA to really get rolling. Really. And there can be a disadvantage to not playing a big-time non-conference opponent, or at least a respectable non-conference opponent, because then once you start playing Pac-12 schools, it's a notable step up. But playing those 3 teams and then playing Colorado on the road, what it can do for you that a different scheduling approach cannot do is give you momentum and confidence. And it can also give you a better chance of staying healthy, because in those first 3 games with Bowling Green, Alabama State, and South Alabama, you should have at least 2 of those games, if not all 3, where Dorian Thompson-Robinson and Zach Charbonnet are not playing a lot or at all in the fourth quarter. That is a very realistic expectation for Bruins fans to have that come to fruition there. So that can be an advantage, but then it's going to start to take a step up. But again, they ease into it at least a little bit. But then they start to get into the meat of their conference schedule, which gets a little more interesting. I'll tell you about that after I tell you about LinkedIn. As the sun comes out and small business is back in business, you have got to check out LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easier to grow your team, and they help you find the people you want to interview faster. They do that because did you know that every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. Okay, continuing along with the conference slate for UCLA. So they go on the road to Colorado, but they don't have to play 2 in a row away from home. They come back for 2 more at the Rose Bowl. So of your first 6 games, you've got 5 of them at home. That's really rare. And that's why, like, I'm pretty high on UCLA this year. I mean, they've got to at least be an 8-win team with this schedule, if not 9. Or I'm predicting them to go 10, but if they go 9, I won't see that as a major letdown. But this is about as favorable of a conference slate as you can have, in addition to the weak non-conference slate that they've got. So they should be 4-0. They come back home the next week on what I believe will be a Friday. Pac-12 after dark. You never know. Stuff gets crazy. Nobody's watching, but stuff gets crazy. They play Washington. And I like UCLA here again, not just because they're at home, but they've got a better roster, whereas Washington is in more of a rebuild phase. Chip Kelly's in his 5th year as a head coach. Kalen DeBoer is in his 1st at the Power 5 level. Dorian Thompson-Robinson is in his 5th year as a starting quarterback. Washington might have Michael Penix, might have Sam Heward starting at this point, might have Dylan Morris. I mean, we don't really know. But nevertheless, you'll have more continuity on UCLA's offense here than you will have with Washington. Penix also, unfortunately, has a major injury history. And I'm not predicting that, or obviously I'm not rooting for that. But that's a very realistic scenario where he might be hurt by that time. He just has struggled to stay on the field throughout his career. He can do some nice things when he gets on the field. He had that upset win for Indiana over Penn State in the COVID year when he was reaching the ball out and he made it, but just like that much right there. So I'm not very high on Washington this year. I think their over/under win total, which I think is 7.5, when I get to them here in the coming episodes of the show, I'm definitely going to have them being under their win total of 7.5. But I think UCLA will go over 8.5. I like the Bruins there. I think they'll beat Washington, and then you could be looking at a 5-0 UCLA team at home again, off of a bye against Utah. I think that's an entirely plausible scenario, and that'd be a big game in the Pac-12 this year. Now, I would feel more confident about picking the Bruins in this game if they had a home field advantage like what Utah has, or what Washington can have, or what Oregon has, or even what they can put together up there in the Palouse at Washington State. But one advantage that Utah is going to have going into a lot of games this year is an experienced quarterback. And you look at Cam Rising, you say, reigning first-team All-Pac-12 performer. I've got him as the second-best quarterback in the conference going into this season behind USC's Caleb Williams. I think he does a lot of things well, makes smart decisions, does a lot of really good things, and I know what I'm going to get from him. Other teams have more question marks at quarterback, right? Oregon State is asking, can Chance Nolan take a step forward? Oregon's wondering, what are they going to get from Bo Nix? Washington's wondering, who's going to be playing quarterback? Washington State, can Cam Ward make the adjustment? A lot of question marks there. But you never have a question about Cam Rising. You know exactly what he's going to do. UCLA, though, can kind of counter that advantage that the Utes often are going to have this year because they've got a 5th-year starter in Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And I think the Bruins are going to squeak this one out and finally get a win over Utah. If this were in Salt Lake City, I will not pick against Utah at home. It's just that crowd is awesome, and I think the Utes will be really good this year. I'm going to do them a little bit later in the week in terms of their season preview. But I think the Bruins are going to be able to squeak this one out. I think it's a tight game, and I know that DTR is more prone still at this point in his career to commit a turnover late in the game than Cam Rising is, but he's also a little bit more explosive than Rising at this point as well. And last year, I'm sure some of you remember, like, well, UCLA lost by 20 last year. DTR wasn't available. Now he's playing in this game. It's his final year of college football. I think he will feel in this game what he was feeling going into USC last year, which is, this is the opportunity to beat this team. And Utah's going to be very good, but UCLA's got him at home. They've got him coming off of a bye, and I think they could be rolling coming into it. And some of you may think I'm crazy, which a handful of you think anyway, but that's all right. I'm really not very bothered by it. But if you think I'm crazy for saying that UCLA will beat Utah here, I just want to ask you this question. Going into last year, off of a losing season, after 3 straight losing seasons, how many of you picked UCLA to beat number 16 LSU? How many? That's all I'm going to say. If you think like, oh, no, they won't beat Utah. Well, someone's going to beat Utah. I don't think the Utes are going 12-0 this year. I don't think anybody's going 12-0. Hardly anybody does in college football. Everybody's got to lose at some point. I think UCLA gets that one done. The next week, they have two buys. Oh, I'm sorry. That's not off a bye. I'm sorry. I don't know how to read dates very well. The Washington game is September 30th. That game is October 8th. So it's not off a bye. I apologize for that. I'm glad I caught it though before people. Well, someone might have hopped in YouTube comments, but anyway. So not off a bye, but still, I like UCLA there at home. I would like them more if they were off a bye. I would like them more if they had a better home field advantage. But I think you'll start to get a decent number of fans of those seats if UCLA, even against a weak schedule, can come out and do what I expect them to, and that's be 5-0. I think they win that game against Utah. They're 6-0 and well inside the top 20 nationally. Then they have a bye, and then they come on the road at Oregon. Now, Oregon has a new first-time head coach in Dan Lanning. He's also got a first-time full-time play caller as his OC in Kenny Dillingham, and then Junior Adams, wide receiver coach, is going to be the co-offensive coordinator. And Bo Nix, question mark, right? Like, we think we know what he can do. Maybe he'll come closer to hit his ceiling, but do we know that? Not really. I think there are a number of factors, and if you picked UCLA to win this game, I wouldn't think it's totally crazy. But the fact that this is at Autzen, I think the only team that'll beat Oregon at Autzen Stadium this year will be Utah. I do not think UCLA gets it done. I think this is their first loss. They remain in the top 25 by lieu of all the wins I think they will have had before this, and I think they fall to 6-1 here. Then they come back home the next week. They're against Stanford. I think that Stanford's big advantage in a game when Stanford football is at their best is they're more physical and they control the line of scrimmage and they win at the point of attack and they control the clock as well. UCLA is a more explosive offensive team. Their tight end was just named to the, as I'm recording this a couple weeks before you're listening to it, but their tight end is on the preseason award watch list for the, I think Ezekiel is his name. I might be pronouncing that wrong. To an awards watch list. I want to look up his name one sec. Michael Ezekiel. Yeah, he's on the John Mackey Award watch list. I think it's Ezekiel. Hope it is. But he's there. You bring in Jake Bobo from Duke. You got Zach Charbonnet, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Kaz Allen as well. That guy is lightning in a bottle. So UCLA's got more weapons here. And I think that at home, their offense is going to be too explosive, and they're able to neutralize, in a sense, at least based on what we saw from them last year, Stanford's advantage with how UCLA's offensive line is capable of controlling the line of scrimmage. People think of Chip Kelly and going fast and scoring a bunch of points, but this UCLA running attack is very physical. They want to punch you in the mouth a little bit. Charbonnet does that. I think Stanford has a little bit of a bounce back year, but I don't think they beat UCLA. I think the Bruins are sitting here at 7-1. If you ever wanted to bet all of these games, where would you go? Where would you go? I mean, there are so many options out there, but there's only one that you should go to, and that's Bet Online, the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. They're providing these over/under lines. UCLA at 8.5. I'd take them over this year, given their schedule. Find all your favorite sports and events at the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball. Go Mariners. Hopefully, by the time you listen to this, they're still the hottest team in the league. But as I record this right now, they are, and it's glorious. They've got the NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, even golf, my personal favorite. Head to Bet Online today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action that is happening. Bet Online is where the game starts. Okay, let's finish out UCLA's schedule. They go at Arizona State on November 5th. And they're coming into this game, I think they'll be 7-1. And after Arizona State, they've got Arizona the next week. Upsets happen every year. We know that. And yet, when someone like me hosting a show predicts an upset, I'm sure I'll get plenty of pushback. Oh, that's not going to happen. Well, they happen at some point. I think one of the Arizona schools is going to pull off an upset of UCLA. I do. Arizona is at home, so it seems less likely. But maybe let's not sleep on the Wildcats making somewhat of a jump, though I think they're a year or two away from where they want to be. But Jed Fish has them moving in the right direction. I think that game, November 5th at Arizona State, I think that's where UCLA stumbles. Crazy things have happened in the desert in this conference for a long time, a long, long time. And though I don't love Arizona State this year, They have added a lot of transfers to make up for the players who left the program, at least somewhat. But they beat UCLA in LA last year, so Herm Edwards has got a formula for beating the Bruins with Chip Kelly as the head coach. They've also got a quarterback coming in Emory Jones, who's got Power 5 experience in the SEC. He wasn't amazingly successful, but it's hard for me to sit here and say right now that I can predict he'd be incompetent or not at the very least solid, right? And so ASU at home, I don't think they're going to have a great season. I really don't. But last year, Oregon beat Stanford. The Cardinal went 3-9, and the Ducks in the regular season went 10-2. And one of their losses was to a 3-9 Stanford team. I think this is where UCLA gets tripped up. And I wouldn't be surprised if they beat ASU and then lose to Arizona somehow, because every team's got letdowns out there. And though I like UCLA, I don't, love them as much as the end of season record here I'm predicting is going to indicate. So I think they lose to one of them. I'll take Arizona State here. But don't sleep on the Wildcats there on pulling that one off. So after November 12th, with 2 games left in the regular season, I think UCLA 8-2. 2 games left on the schedule. Another one at home, another big game at home. I mentioned this when I started today's show. Notice how many times they're at home, and notice how many times they're playing important teams at home. The only really difficult road game that UCLA has this year is going at Oregon. That's the toughest place they're going to play. At Colorado, there's a tougher place to try to win a college football game. Last week of the regular season, they go at Cal. Probably going to be a mediocre to below average team this year and not an amazing home field advantage. At Arizona State, that can be wild. ASU fans can get rowdy. Sun Devils can be sneaky good. They've pulled upsets of teams in the Pac-12 before, and they beat UCLA last year, even though the Bruins, I think, were the better overall team. And though I could also foresee ASU going like 3-9, that could be one of their wins. I really, really think that could be the spot. We'll see how that plays out. But November 19th, the game that everybody's circling, because now it's Lincoln Riley. It's not, who was the head coach? Williams. Dante Williams, I think, was the interim head coach last year. And USC scored a bunch of points, but UCLA punched them in the mouth. 62-33 at the Coliseum. Now, is USC better than last year? Yes, of course. They've added a bunch of talent in the transfer portal. They've got a smarter head coach running the show. Defensively, we'll see. We'll see how much they're able to improve from last year. But even with good coaches, rebuilds tend to take more than a year. Maybe that'll be slightly accelerated with the transfer portal. But I think USC, as I said yesterday, is going to go 9-3. I think they're going to lose this game, and UCLA is going to show up ready to rock and roll, and they will have an opportunity here to beat their crosstown rival, who has been the superior program for basically all time. When you're talking about those two football programs, I think UCLA has a chance here, and I think DTR, like he did last year, is going to play with a little bit of an edge and some swagger and some moxie, and I think he's going to help UCLA pull it off. So I think they win that game, go to 9-2, and then the next week they're at Cal. I like the Bruins here. Cal's home field advantage might be fully deteriorated and virtually non-existent if their regular season doesn't yield sparkling results, because they can also tend to lack flash and be a tough watch for a casual fan because they're defensively oriented and they like grinded out affairs and whatnot. But I think UCLA goes on the road and wins that game for just their 4th road game of the year. I think they go 3-1 on the road, or 3-2. Sorry, 3. I think they lose a couple games on the road, but I don't see them losing a home game. And look, will I be shocked if they lose to Utah and or USC, frankly? No, because those are going to be good to great teams. I think USC will be good. I think Utah could be pretty close to great this year. But I like UCLA. They have a lot of things going for them. And at some point, you got to be able to make that leap. I think UCLA could do that this year. So overall record prediction, I've got them tying for first with Utah in the Pac-12 South at 10-2, 7-2 in conference play with losses to ASU and Oregon, but wins over USC and Utah. But if you just were talking in the abstract, Like, this is a very schedule-based prediction in terms of their record, because I do like UCLA, but I have questions about their defense too. Now, they have a new defensive coordinator who comes from the NFL, and they needed to replace him, the previous guy, like 2 years ago, but they didn't. They have now. Maybe that'll help. But still, there are question marks defensively. You lose Mitchell Agude, who was your best pass rusher from a season ago. That's certainly not going to be an easy thing to replace. They added a couple of transfer twins from North Texas, but again, that all somewhat remains to be seen there. But if you were talking in the abstract, and I say, what sort of caliber team is UCLA this year, I'd say 8, maybe 9 wins. But I'm predicting them here at 10 because of their schedule. It is very schedule based, because if I didn't know who they were playing and I thought it was going to be a standard, tougher schedule or standard schedule, like this is a really, really favorable schedule for the Bruins this year. If I didn't know that they had that, I'd say they probably max out at 9 wins, but they probably win 8, and I could maybe see 7 happening. But you play those first 3 schools: Bowling Green, Alabama State, South Alabama, and then you get USC and Utah at home, and your only 4 road games are Colorado, ASU, Cal, and Oregon. That's only going to be one ranked team on the road. You only have to play one ranked road team this year. That's a big time edge for UCLA. I wouldn't be super surprised, because I'm making this prediction. I'm going to stand by it, but I think it's fair to add context of, will I be surprised if they come out and, have another 8-4 campaign? No. I mean, you only win one of USC and Utah and then drop another game they shouldn't. We've seen letdowns from Chip Kelly's UCLA Bruins in the past couple of years, right? Most notably Fresno State a season ago, but maybe the new DC will be able to change that. But if you're the Bruins or you're a fan of UCLA, you have to expect at least 8 wins with that schedule this year. That has to be at least 8, right? In the abstract, I'd say if you win 7, it's not totally terrible. You win 7 games on that schedule. Don't know if I want to go as far to say it's a fireable offense, because you'd still be above 500, which for UCLA is not something they can say they've consistently been able to do recently. But you got to win at least 8 games. You're Chip Kelly. You're getting paid a decent amount to go there. You chose UCLA over going to take the head coaching gig at Florida. You have got to win at least 8 games there. And if they win 9, then I think that'd be a really good year as well. But it'd be bad if they dropped if they drop below 8 wins in 2022. Schedules matter. That's why we break them down. We will keep them rolling this week. I appreciate everyone listening. See you next time, and have a wonderful rest of your day.